still about 2 minutes out, folks.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Dole Institute of Politics. My name is Aprame Mishra, and I'm a member of the Dole Institute's Student Advisory Board, the official student group of the Institute. The Student Advisory Board is a bipartisan group whose members can access many great opportunities through their involvement. If you are a student who would like to join, please contact us by emailing dolesab@ku.edu. After the presentation, we will have some time for questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand and a student worker with a microphone will come to you. Please stand if you are able and ask just one brief question. If you have difficulty hearing during the program, please alert one of our staff members or student volunteers who will assist you. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you to please turn off your cell phones. And now, could you please join me in welcoming Associate Director Dr. Barbara Ballard.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon and welcome to the Dole Institute of Politics 2018 Dole Lecture. Before introducing today's guest, we would like to announce the recipients of two special Dole Institute awards. The Robert E. Hemingway Public Service Award was established in May of 2009 in honor of our 16th Chancellor of the University of Kansas upon his retirement. This award is given to a junior KU student who has demonstrated a commitment to making a difference for KU students and furthering the idea of service on campus and within the community. This award includes a $1,000 cash prize. We had three finalists, and the three finalists for the award are Katie Bernard, a major of journalism and political science. And could I ask her parents to please stand, Dick and Julie Bernard. Thank you. I'll ask Katie to stand as well. Alex Murray is our second finalist in environmental studies, and Adam Hupp in mechanical engineering. The recipient of this award is Adam Hupp. Adam, would you please stand? And remain standing. And could his parents, Jonathan and Reagan Hupp, please stand to be recognized? Thank you all very much. 2018 is the inaugural year of the Robert J. Dole Service to Country Award. This award recognizes KU students who are active members of the Dole Institute Student Advisory Board for their involvement at the Institute and their commitment to public service and demonstrated leadership. It includes a $1,000 cash prize and was endowed by John Pennegar and Kathleen and Douglas Smith. Could the Smiths please stand to be recognized? The recipient of this award is Claire Mitzkowski. Could you stand, Claire? And could her parents, Frank and Joyce Mitzkowski, please stand as well? And thank you again. Congratulations to both Adam and Claire. Today's interview will be conducted by Dole Institute Director Bill Lacey. Our guest is the ambassador to the United States for the Republic of Kosovo and the first sitting ambassador to visit the Dole Institute. She has risen through the political ranks of Kosovo since entering politics after the Kosovo War of the late 90s. She has served 2 terms in the Kosovo Assembly and as Kosovo's Deputy Foreign Minister, Acting Foreign Minister, and Minister of European Integration. Prior to her current role, she was Consul General of the Republic of Kosovo's mission in New York. In addition to her work on behalf of Kosovo in Washington, D.C., she serves as an honorary member of a number of organizations, including recently serving as the honorary chair of the 38th Annual Anniversary Gala of the Refugees International. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please join me in welcoming Ambassador Vlora Çitaku. And I will pronounce that again because it's Vlora Çitaku. Very short. Thank you.
Madam Ambassador, welcome to the Dole Institute.
Thank you very much, and it's a great honor and privilege for me to be here with you today.
Wonderful. I don't know if my mic is working. It doesn't sound like it is. Okay, does that help? Sorry about that. Let's start with a little bit about you personally. Tell us about your upbringing and your education.
Thank you very much. Well, my story is, in a way, the story of my country. As I was walking in earlier today to visit this beautiful, beautiful center, I was reminded of the very painful and difficult journey that my country has gone through, and where Senator Dole played a crucial role. He's your best son, but he is my hero, and he's the hero of so many Kosovars. If you don't know Bob Dole, you will get lost in the streets of Pristina, because one of the main roads is named after him. I remember Senator Dole visiting Kosovo in the early 90s, in the 1999 to be more precise. And that was the year when our schools were closed. Serbian regime decided to shut down every school in Albanian language. And my parents, who used to work as university professors, all of a sudden lost their job. So I remember going to school in private houses, because at times of such difficult moments, somehow the very best of humanity manages to come out. Albanians in Kosovo offered their homes and turned those homes into schools. And teachers worked without any salaries for years, just in order to be able to provide us with some education. So that's how I grew up, seeing my teachers being beaten up in front of me almost every day, and seeing my parents, my heroes, who had spent their life educating generations, all of a sudden losing everything they had worked for. But even in the most difficult of moments, I was always hopeful, because we were not alone. We had friends like Senator Dole, Congressman Tom Lantosh, Congressman Elliot Engel, who spoke on our behalf. And the day I presented my credentials, actually, which is 2015, September 2015, my uncle called me and he reminded me of a story which I had completely forgotten, but which says a lot about the role that America played in Kosovo. So I was getting ready to go and present my credentials, and my uncle called, and he doesn't call very often, so I had to pick up the phone. And he said, "Vlora, well, I just want to remind you of a story of a summer 1986. And I'm like, okay. Well, it was a very difficult year in Kosovo, and you came to me and told me, Uncle, next summer I'm going to America, and I'm going to meet with the president. And I know that president will do something to help us." So the story here is not that I made it. The story here is that a 6-year-old child in a forgotten place had hope because America exists. So this is how I grew up, under extreme difficulties, but always hopeful, because I knew that America was on our side. So thank you for that.
Yeah. You were actually a refugee as a
Yes.
teenager. Tell us what that was like, and then how that has affected kind of your worldview and your commitment to public service.
Yes, when the actual war erupted in the late 90s in Kosovo, after Bosnia and after Rwanda, the world and the United States decided to act. And just as what we're seeing now with Syria, the world deciding to act, to stop the atrocities. That's what the world did back in the late 90s with Kosovo. But as the story goes, always before it gets better, it gets worse. 1 million people, which is half of Kosovo's population, were deported. Over 10,000 people were killed, and around 20,000 women were raped, which is a lot for a country with a population of 2 million. We were all affected in one way or the other. I have personally lost 11 members of my family. And I also became a refugee, just like 1 million Kosovars did. I remember when the Serbian police and paramilitary forces came to kick us out from our homes. I remember carrying my little sister in my arms, and we were separated from our parents. And I remember walking empty-handed, with no address, with no family pictures, separated from everything I knew and loved. I remember when we reached the border with Macedonia, and I remember when we crossed it. There was a sea of people, Albanians from Macedonia, who had come to take us home, who had offered us home. I remember there was a man, and when he saw me with my sisters, he broke into tears. And he said, I have 3 children of my own, and you're coming and you're going to be my children too. And that moment when he took us in, he didn't know whether that was going to last 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, or forever. But he offered us shelter. He offered us home. And then a couple of months later, the war ended. I was reunited with my parents, and we all went back home. All refugees decided to go back home because no one wants to be a refugee, and no one chooses to be a refugee. I think there's often a mistake being made. People put migrants and refugees in the same category. Refugees do not leave by choice. They don't run for a better life. They run for life. So I think all of us need to be open-hearted and support refugees. And there are many ways to support them. There are many ways to help them. There are so many NGOs that deal with refugees whom we can support, because those people are in need of everything. And because of what I had gone through, there was no way I was going to sit on the sidelines. Because when you're not free, when you're not independent, other options are simply inexistent. You need to get involved. So I got involved, politically active at a very young age. I don't think I knew what I was doing, but I think I knew that I could not just sit and wait for things to happen. I had to get involved. So I remember right after we gained our freedom in 1999, we realized that freedom and independence are not the only worry. You have roads to build, schools to construct, laws to adopt, institutions to establish, poverty to fight. There's so much to be done, and everything is a priority. So I remember getting involved, and I was elected in the parliament with being one of the youngest, if not the youngest, member of the parliament for 2 legislations. I am very proud to have been one of the representatives of the people that signed the Declaration of Independence. And I am very happy to be today in Washington representing my country.
Okay. Kosovo is a newly formed republic, and Americans don't know a whole lot about it. And I knew a little bit about it because of my connection with Senator Dole, but not a lot. And I'm suspecting that a lot of folks here. Just fill us in a little bit of historical background and how Kosovo came to be a republic and how it was formed.
So for those of you who don't know, Kosovo is the youngest democracy in Europe. We are in southeastern Europe, in between Italy and Greece. We are the youngest democracy and the youngest demography. We just celebrated our 10th anniversary of independence this February. So that makes us 2 years younger than Twitter. We're very young. But we are also the youngest demography. 70% of our population is under 30. So I'm not young for Kosovo standards. When you walk in the streets of Pristina, which is our capital, you feel like you're in a university campus. Everybody's so young and so energetic. So it's a tiny, beautiful country, the size of Connecticut, less than roughly 2 million people. We have a very strong and powerful diaspora. 1/3 of our population lives in Europe, predominantly in Germany and Switzerland. Half of the Swiss national team is Kosovars, actually, and we take pride in them. So we are young, but very, very vibrant democracy. We are, by far, the most pro-American nation on earth. By far. The approval rating of US in Kosovo is, I don't know, over 80%, 90%. So if you want to feel pampered for being Americans, visit Kosovo. We are, just let me illustrate it for you. Like the main boulevard in my country, you have a crossroad. It's Bob Dole, Bill Clinton. Then further down is George W. Bush. And then further down is Elliot Engel, then Tom Lantosh, then Madeleine Albright Square, then Condoleezza Rice Square. So it's, and you have babies named after them. So it's a very, very pro-American, country. I remember when 9/11 happened. And I'm very proud of the work Senator Dole did with Bill Clinton to support the families of the victims. But when 9/11 happened, I remember going in the office the next morning, and there was a sea of people waiting in front of my office. They were young men who had come to enlist and fight for America. And I was in trouble because there was no way I was able to do that for them. But I remember talking to them, and they were telling me they came to our rescue. And this is the time for us to go and fight and protect America. And I remember myself telling them, well, don't worry, America is strong. But they really wanted to come and protect this country. So this is how deeply we feel, how strongly we feel about United States. So it's very pro-American, and we see ourselves being members of European Union and NATO. Of course, Kosovo is no paradise. We still have a lot of problems. The economy is not, although we've had positive economical growth ever since we declared independence, we still have a very high number of unemployment, especially amongst the youth. Of course, there's still a lot of problem with organized crime and corruption. There's much more that needs to be done in order to strengthen the rule of law. But comparatively speaking, with the rest of the countries in the Western Balkans, we're doing great. And we're looking forward to becoming even more active player of the global community.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about the economy. You mentioned unemployment, but what's the economy built on? Is it mostly industry, agriculture?
It's predominantly services and agriculture. Many decades ago, of course, it was more built on industry, mining industry, but our economy was completely destroyed and devastated during the war. We had inherited a country in ashes, completely in ashes. So we had to work hard in order to reconstruct our economy. Plus, we had to go through multiple transitions from centralized economy to free market economy, from occupation to freedom, from totalitarian regime to democracy. And this transition was not very easy, and sometimes it was a painful process. But now the economy is recovering. We have, as I said, a very young population. They are very skilled, especially on IT sector. We have this beautiful innovation center in Pristina, and each time I go back home, I stop by and I visit them, and I'm inspired and I'm in awe. And most of the time, I do not understand what they're telling me. But they're so competitive and so committed to making Kosovo a champion on innovation and technology. And I believe that's where the future is.
Mm-hmm. What's it like in Kosovo being a female and being involved in politics?
Well, just so you know, we already had a woman president. So the fourth president of Republic of Kosovo was a young woman. I remember when I was elected member of the parliament, and right after we declared independence, we had to do everything. We had to adopt the constitution and legislation. And one of the laws we adopted in the early days was the law on the president. And being a young member of the parliament and being a woman, there was something that disturbed me in the language of the law. And I remember I raised my hand, and the speaker said, Ms. Çitaku, and I said, well, the law speaks only about the president and the first lady. What if we have a woman president? And then there was an explosion of laughter in the parliament. Well, guess who laughed back a couple of years later? We had a woman president, and she just concluded she concluded her term last year very gracefully. We have 30% women in the parliament. We have a constitutional quota for women. Our chief justice is woman, a young girl that studied in America, actually. Head of our election committee is woman. So women have played a very important role in the state building process in my country. But more importantly, women have played crucial role in establishing the social cohesion. Society building is far more difficult than state building. Building a society right after the war and melting broken pieces is very difficult and very painful. And this is an area where women have played a very important role. And I will give you just a few examples. There is a village in Kosovo where the entire male population was completely killed during the war. And because of women, that village is no longer known only for its tragic past. Because of women, that village has become a symbol of revival. Women in that village decided that mourning, crying, cursing, and revenge is not the way how they will honor their fallen husbands and brothers. They decided to roll up their sleeves, work their land, establish small farms, and today their products, pickle products, are customers' favorite in Kosovo. And they're already exporting in Switzerland and in Germany, and I'm trying to do something for them here in US also. And when I spoke to one of the leaders there, women leaders, Fahriye Hoti, she told me, I have no time for revenge. That's too much of a heavy burden to carry. I have my son, I have my daughter, and I want to make sure they get education. Today, her son is studying in one of the top universities in Switzerland. Her daughter is going to study as well. And the entire village has been rebuilt because of these women. Then you have Majlinda Kelmandi. 2 years ago, Kosovo managed to participate for the first time in the Olympics. It was a great moment of joy and celebration to see our flag. And it was our first participation, and we won our first golden medal in judo. So you should never say you fight like a girl in Kosovo, because our girls win medals fighting. Majlinda, she was offered millions to compete for other countries because Kosovo was not a member of the International Olympic Committee. She refused. She was training under very difficult circumstances, often without heat or electricity, but she never, ever gave up. And she gave me a lesson. Not only me, but everybody who works in public service. That A, there are things that money cannot buy. And two, never, ever give up. So it's women like them that have inspired me, but also inspired the entire nation. So women are very, very strong in Kosovo. Of course, it's difficult. It's, you know, you have to be an A+ student to get a C- when you're a girl. It's far more difficult, far more challenging, but I am very proud of the accomplishments that women in my country have made.
Mhm. You referenced, and this is something I'd like you to explain in a little bit more depth. You referenced the constitutional quotas for membership in Parliament. Can you talk a little bit about how that came to be and exactly how it works?
Well, I guess one of the advantages of being a young democracy is that you get to learn from the best of experiences, and you don't have to invent the wheel. So you just follow the best examples that are out there, and you enshrine them in your laws and constitution. There is a law for election in Kosovo, but above that is the constitution, which says that 30% of the members of the parliament, at least 30% of the members of the parliament, have to be women. So in our proportional system, at least 1/3 of the candidates have to be women, and 1/3 of the elected must be women. So we have made sure that women are represented in the parliament. We also have a national strategy for gender equality, which requires women representation in all institutions and in all governmental bodies. I must say I'm not very happy with where we are today, because out of 20 ministers in the government, only 2 are women. So I hope that next governments will have more female representation. So there is a progress, but gender equality is just like any other liberty. You have to fight and to struggle to protect it and preserve it every day. But as I said, women in the parliament have done a terrific job. And while in the early days, in the first legislation, many of them were there because of the quota, today, most of them are there because of the votes they've earned. So women were given a chance in our young republic, and they have thrived.
Mm-hmm. What are your principal duties and objectives as ambassador?
That's a big one. Well, first of all, it's to remind our friends in Washington that Kosovo and the rest of the Western Balkans is still unfinished business. While tremendous progress has been made, our region is still very fragile, and unfortunately, in the last couple of years, it has become a chessboard of very competing powers, most of them very unfriendly. Russia has tripled its diplomatic presence in the region. They are buying media, they are buying NGOs, they're building a military base in southern Serbia. So the job has not been done. We need US to be engaged. We need US to be present. And we need US to maintain a leadership role. I belong to a generation of Europeans whose life was changed forever because of the role US has played. And I cannot imagine living in a world where US doesn't have the leadership role. Now, I understand for many Americans, it's difficult to understand and probably justify US's engagement in the world. But I think that today, more than ever, we live in an interdependent world. Challenges we face, threats we face, are borderless. So a peaceful and secure Europe is in America's interest for many, many reasons. And if US is not present, somebody else is. So it's in our mutual interest to have US maintain its leadership role in Europe as well. And that's what I try to convey to this administration, to the Hill, and to the many friends we have in Washington, D.C.
And you've talked about how popular the United States is in your home country, but what's the relationship between the two governments? How is that right now? And who are some of your key supporters in Congress today?
It's been a very, very good relationship. One of our blessings has been that we have enjoyed a very strong bipartisan support. We've always had very strong support from the Republican administrations and a very strong support from Democrats as well.
Sounded like the streets you were describing,
exactly.
the squares are very bipartisan.
Very bipartisan. And even today, that continues. President Trump is more popular in Kosovo than in Texas or Kansas. His approval ratings in Kosovo are over 80%. So it's a strong feeling we have, a strong bond we have with United States. So the tradition has continued, so to say. We have a very, very good relationship with the new administration also. It's been very good that one of the first visits that the Vice President did overseas was in our part of the world, in the Western Balkans. We have a very good relationship with another good and brave man from Kansas, now hopefully the new Secretary of State to be, Mike Pompeo. So I have no concerns about the relationship between our two countries. We also have a very broad support in the House, both in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, very bipartisan. Well, the good news is that Kosovo is not a hot spot in the global politics, but the bad news is that it's still unfinished. So we still need to maintain the attention, and I must say that the attention is there also because of men like Senator Dole, who always brings Kosovo each time he meets with different representatives in Washington.
What are some of the most serious challenges that Kosovo faces as a nation?
Well, today, of course, the main problem or the main challenge is our relationship with Serbia. Although the war has ended almost 2 decades ago, Serbia still has not recognized the independence of Kosovo. And they operate in the region as a Russian proxy. They have a very contagious relationship, not only with Kosovo, but also with the rest of the countries in the Western Balkans. So establishing or fully normalizing the relationship with Serbia still remains one of the major challenges we have in the region. Now, Kosovo is ready for it. Blessed or doomed, we will be living as neighbors for the rest of our lives. So the sooner we fully normalize the relationship with Serbia, the better it is for Kosovo, for Serbia, and for the rest of the region. But what we want is normalization. not subjugation. We want to see each other as equals, as two nations that work hand in hand to help one another to become members of European Union and other regional and international initiatives. Unfortunately, Serbia still has not moved on, and they still live, unfortunately, with the ideas of the lost century. And it gives me no pleasure to say this, because in our own interest is for Serbia to move on and progress and prosper. But unfortunately, that's not the case. For them, still, Kosovo and many parts of former Yugoslavia are considered as areas where they can exercise their supremacy. They don't realize that the world has changed, times have changed. This is not 1990s, this is 2018. Kosovo is independent and member of many regional and international organizations. But they still are holding on to the past, and they still have not gone through a process of denazification. Just yesterday, for example, or two days ago, when was it, that US, UK, and France decided to intervene in Syria. Serbian president came out, and basically his position was identical with the one that Putin has. So as long as Serbia is hostage of the ideas of the lost century, it will be very difficult for Kosovo to stand alone without US support and to continue its European path. So managing this dynamic with Belgrade is still one of the biggest challenges we have. Because also economical development and economical growth is dependent on political stability. Every investor wants predictability. Now, I can come and give speeches and tell you as much as I want that Kosovo is peaceful, which it is, and it is safe, which it is. When you see headlines of Serbian verbal aggression, it can make you uncomfortable. So managing this dynamic is probably the biggest challenge we have in the region.
Okay. And then what are some of the challenges that families and individual citizens face in Kosovo? What is day to day? What are the things that they're having to struggle with?
Well, just like in any other country in the Western Balkans, young families in Kosovo and my family in Kosovo, they want better jobs, they want better life, they want ability to travel freely, they want an ability to see Kosovo as an equal member of the global family. So the challenges that a young Kosovar faces are not exclusive. Those are challenges of every single young European that lives in that part of the world. Better jobs, better economy, and ability to travel, and ability to feel equal. You know, I grew up being treated as a second-class citizen. And I hope no other Kosovar will ever feel that way.
Okay. Now you mentioned a little bit earlier, Madam Ambassador, the European Union. How important is membership for Kosovo in the European Union?
It's probably one of the major foreign policy objectives in Kosovo. I was just talking about the very difficult relationship we need to manage with Belgrade. But one thing that unites both Kosovo, Serbia, Montenegro, Albania, Macedonia, and the rest of the countries in the Western Balkans is the desire to join the European Union. And I cannot imagine any other situation where Kosovo and Serbia would be able to sit and talk to one another, as we are doing now, if there were no European Union perspective, if there were no perspective to join the European family. We have, for me and for the rest of Kosovars, but I guess for most of the countries in the region, joining European Union first and foremost means peace. Young Europeans in the Western Europe have become more cynical. They have forgotten what was the idea that led to the establishment of the European Union itself. It was the idea of peace. And that peace has produced prosperity. Europe has never been more prosperous than it is now, and Europe has never been more peaceful than it is now. 7 decades of peace is not something you take for granted in Europe. And unfortunately, many have started to take that for granted. Many think that war is no longer imaginable. Well, the record in the Western Balkans shows that progress is easily reversible if you don't invest in peace. So I think this is why Kosovars, but also the rest of the countries in the Western Balkans, are still so enthusiastic about the idea of Europe. Now, there's no doubt that peace is not enough. And there's no doubt that Europe needs to reinvent itself, needs to reform itself, needs to reconstruct itself, because many people feel that institutions in Brussels are too detached from the reality. As someone who was a minister for European integration, I must say that often I was frustrated as well with European Commission and with procedures. But there's no alternative for European Union in Europe, and we're going to work hard to become a member of it.
Okay. You've mentioned Bob Dole and your great admiration and appreciation for him. Talk a little bit about his legacy in Kosovo and what he did to get that great amount of respect and admiration in your country.
Well, I must say that just being here with you today in this institute is something that I could have never imagined 2 decades ago. First time Bob Dole visited Kosovo was in the 1990s, just after Milosevic revoked our autonomy. And I remember hearing, and if there is any Kosovar, and I see one there, I'm sure you remember also, when we heard that a group of congressmen and senators from US have decided to visit Kosovo. And somehow everybody went out in the streets. We wanted to see them. It was like the hand of God had come to touch us. And all of a sudden we were not alone. And I remember, and everybody in Kosovo remembers, the remarks that Senator Dole did after his visit in Kosovo. And we all remember that what followed his visit was a very firm US policy. George Bush Sr., while he was president, announced what became known as the Christmas warning, a warning he gave to Slobodan Milosevic, saying that Kosovo is the red line. And if he uses violence against Kosovo, US will act. And that red line was violated, and US acted. And this would have never happened without Bob Dole, without his unwavering support. That is why his name will always be remembered in Kosovo. He is my hero, and he is the hero of 2 million Kosovars who today live free because of what he did. And it is men like him that represent the best of America. I was honored to attend the ceremony in Congress in the Capitol. And it is days like that that give me hope. But it is also days like that that show the world what America is and why this country is so great. Leadership from across the aisle, president, vice president, speaker, everybody was there to honor a true American hero. And the world saw that day that while there might be disagreements between Democrats and Republicans, when it comes to honoring their heroes, America unites. And I saw that day in the Capitol.
Mm-hmm. What is the attitude of young people in Kosovo about public service and about being involved in government and politics?
Well, as I said, we are a very young demography. 70% of our population is under 30, and that is also reflected in our institutions. We have very young ministers, very young members of the parliament. People are very politically active. Now, of course, just like in many democracies, there's a lot of pressure from our young people towards us to work harder, to do better. They criticize a lot, which is good. They use modern tools and technology to unite amongst themselves and to pressure us. And it's good. I love to see how engaged and how involved young people in Kosovo are. And they manage to unite in the wide spectrum of issues, from air pollution to, I don't know, rescuing animals. It's a very active, very vibrant society, and young people are at the very heart of it. And sometimes it can be difficult because when you're young, you have very little patience. You want everything and you want it now. So there's a lot of pressure sometimes, but it's good. I love to see our young people being so active and so dynamic. And I'm also very happy and proud that they don't have to go through what I have gone through. My job was to make it a bit easier for the next generations, and I hope they will continue to make it a bit easier for the generations that will follow.
Okay. I have one final question, then we're going to open it up to questions and answers from the audience. And I noted that there are a number of students here who are here today. So if you have questions, we definitely want you to raise your hand, and one of our student workers will bring a microphone to you so you can ask your question. But Madam Ambassador, we've honored two of our star students here at the university today for their commitment to public service and for improving our country. What advice would you, given what you've seen in your life and your career, what advice would you give to all young people in America about the importance of them being engaged?
Well, the first advice I would give to both of you is to build friendships. Even if you're the best, the smartest, the brightest, you will never be able to make it alone. If you want to have impact in your societies, in your communities, build friendships, build networks, lift each other up, help one another. That's the only way you can make great impact. Secondly, do not put deadlines to miracles. You know, I was 6 years old when I said to my uncle, I will meet with the president. Well, I had to wait for a couple of decades, but so do not put deadlines to miracles. Do not give up when it becomes difficult, because it will become. You know, it's the higher you go, the more challenging and the more difficult it becomes. But that's why you need friends, you need colleagues, you need people you can lean on, and you need to lift one another up. So that would be my advice.
Okay, wonderful. We'll open it up to questions from the audience. If you have a question, please raise your hand and attract one of our students. We have one here, and we'll start right here.
Madam Ambassador, my name is Vitaly Chernetsky. I'm a professor in the Department of Slavic Languages and Literatures and director of the Center for Russian, East European, and Eurasian Studies here. And I'm originally from Ukraine, even though now proud to be an American citizen. I have a twofold question for you. As somebody who cares greatly about the very difficult time my country of birth has been going through since Russian invasion of portions of Ukraine in 2014, I was wondering what support, what lessons Kosovo can give Ukraine in dealing with these challenges. And as a professor who teaches literature and cinema and other contemporary culture, I wanted to ask, how is Kosovo trying to get its cultural riches known and appreciated in other countries, especially in this country? We know it's a challenge for all of East European countries to get our literatures and cultures better read and appreciated. So any words of wisdom from you on that? Thank you.
Well, I must say that it was very difficult to see and very painful for us to see what was going on in Ukraine, but unfortunately it was predictable. Putin didn't become aggressive overnight. He didn't just wake up one beautiful morning and decide to invade Ukraine. He was giving signals of aggression. And unfortunately, those signals were ignored by Europe, and unfortunately, US was not very present in that part of the world until it became too late. European Union relied way too much on Putin's goodwill. And we in the Balkans have seen it very aggressively before Ukraine happened, but also after Ukraine happened, that the only language Putin understands is the one of force. If I would have one advice to give to my friends in Ukraine, is to try to establish a broader political consensus amongst themselves. Because for someone who sits outside, Very often the political spectrum in Ukraine can seem very fragmented. And we also understand that Putin tries to manipulate, bribe, corrupt. We've seen all those games played in our part of the world as well. But in order to preserve international credibility, you need internal consensus. And I think this is where political leadership in Ukraine needs to work harder in order to become even more credible regional and international partner. Because this is not a battle Ukraine can win on its own. In order to regain its control over its territory, Ukraine will have to convince its European and American allies that is credible and serious partner. And this is where the efforts should go. I remember when we were going through the process of dialogue with Serbia to establish the final status of Kosovo, we had built what became known as the unity team, a team where the whole political class, be it in the government or the opposition, would unite and then go and talk to Serbia, because you're stronger when you're together with the rest of the political class. About culture, well, I failed to mention when I spoke about Kosovo that another area of great pride is our culture and our young artists. We already had our first Oscar nomination, although we didn't win. But we got the nomination, and I'm sure we eventually will. We won 2 BAFTA awards. We have very young and talented pop singers. Maybe the younger ones in the crowd would know if I mention Dua Lipa and Rita Ora, or if I start singing their songs, you would know them definitely. Each time I'm on Uber or I take a cab, it's one of their songs playing. So our pop culture has managed to penetrate very well in the international market. We also have one of the top short documentary festivals in the world, in one of the most beautiful cities in Kosovo, Prizren. So there's a lot happening in the cultural front as well. We have, he's being considered the new Placido Domingo. We have this young, very talented tenor from Kosovo who's performing throughout the best opera houses of the world. So there's a lot of talent that has been unleashed, but of course there's a lot, much more we will need to do as institutions, because those are all individuals who made it on their own with very little or no institutional support. So I think if we work even harder, we will be able to share with the world the great potential and the great artists we have.
Okay, we have a question here, and it looks like there's a question back there.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. My name is Andrei Matveyev, and I'm curious, given the unquestionably long and difficult road your country and its people have had to travel in the past 20 years, what is your government's position on supporting independence drives in places like Iraqi Kurdistan or even Abkhazia and South Ossetia? Thank you.
Well, first and foremost, Kosovo's independence is not a product of secessionist movement. Kosovo's independence is product of unconsensual dissolution of Yugoslavia. Kosovo was part of a union, a federal unit of a union that no longer exists. So there is no parallel. We had our borders long before we had our statehood. So there is no parallel between the situation in Kosovo and different situations around the world. Actually, at Serbia's request, just 1 year after we declared independence, the International Court of Justice ruled about the legality of Kosovo's declaration of independence. And the opinion of the court was very clear, unanimous, and unambiguous that Kosovo was within its right when it declared independence and that it did not break any international law. So the Kosovo situation is sui generis and cannot be applied as a model for different situations around the world. Now, sentiments are different story, but the truth is that Kosovo went through a process of statehood, which has nothing in common with different situations occurring around the globe.
Okay, we have a question right here.
Madam Ambassador, thank you for coming. My name is Frank Jansen. Before I ask a question, let me go ahead and ask what you asked, or almost asked. How many people are here from Kosovo? How many Kosovars are in the audience? Oh, just one, two. Thank you for speaking today. You've told us many wonderful things. I assume you saw this article a week and a half ago from the New York Times. Kosovo's war ended, but not the shooting, and it mentions the court in The Hague promises justice.
Yes.
Okay, it's about the KLA, Kosovo Liberation
Yes.
Army. I don't know whether you were part of that or not, and apparently your president was or is a part of that. And the article points out that the question is your reaction to this article,
Okay.
which mentions people who are disappearing and being killed who are opposition to the main party. What is your reaction to this? Which I would say is probably a footnote to what you spoke today, because you said many wonderful things. Thanks.
Well, first of all, I was not a member of the Kosovo Liberation Army, but I wish I was. It would have made me proud to fight for freedom of my country. Kosovo Liberation Army is not a terrorist organization. It was an army that fought for freedom, and I am proud to be one of their early supporters. Also, Kosovo Liberation Army was not a formal army. It was more like a movement. It was not a well-structured one command, with young people who list up and do training no. It was a war, and people stood up and took arms to fight and defend their country. They didn't go to Serbia and fight. They were fighting in their villages, in their hometowns, in their homes, to protect their family and to protect their country. So I am very proud of every young man and girl who joined them. Now, are they all saints? Probably not. And if any individual has violated rules of war or Geneva Conventions, they should face justice. Although we were the victims, and although we were the oppressed ones, that does not give us or anyone a blanket check. Everybody should be accountable for their own actions. But what you're suggesting is there's no equation, there's no moral parity between what Serbia did and what Kosovo Liberation Army did. It would be like comparing French Revolution and the Nazis, or the Jewish people resistance with the Nazis. We fought for freedom. That was what inspired us, not the desire to attack anyone else. But at the same time, that court is a court that was established by our government, by our institutions, because we have nothing to hide. We're proud of our fight for freedom.
Okay. Other questions? We've got a question back here.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon, Madam Ambassador. My name is Victoria Snitzer, and I'm a member of the Student Advisory Board here at the Dole Institute. And my question is, so throughout the program, you mentioned several times the really relatively young demography of your country, and I was wondering if there's anything that Kosovo is doing to prepare for problems that can come with an aging population, similar to what we're seeing right now with the stress of the social security system in the U.S. with all the baby boomers that are moving through that system.
I don't hear and are.
Yeah. Let's try again, Victoria. Slow down and speak a little louder,
Louder.
okay?
Okay, so my question is there anything that Kosovo, as a relatively young demographically country, is doing to prepare for potential drains on like a social security system, similar to what we're seeing right now in the U.S. with the baby boomers and the aging population moving through that?
Well, you know, each time they ask me about our young population and our young demography, you know, it's also every asset is also a liability. It's the immediate effects. There's more young people going into the labor market than job opportunities for them. So the immediate, so to say, challenge is providing and enabling employment for all of them. Secondly is what will follow in the decades to come, when that population will age, and how are we going to be able to afford pensions and a safety net for all of them. Now, on a positive note, we have positive growth of population also. So we are probably one of the very few countries in Europe whose population is not aging, and whose population is projected to maintain positive growth in the decades to come. So that's not an immediate, at least it's not an immediate threat or challenge for Kosovo. But things might change with Kosovo becoming member of the European Union, and that is foreseen to happen not far from now. Then the internal dynamics will change, because the movement of the people will change also. So I guess we will have to think harder in the decades to come. It's not an immediate threat for Kosovo, also because of as I spoke earlier, because of our diaspora, because of our remittances. We have around 700 million euros coming every year in Kosovo from our diaspora. That's cash, just cash. So that has provided a safety net for many of our young population. But I think in the decades to come, that will be a challenge for Kosovo as much as it is for the rest of the countries in the Western Balkans.
Okay, we have a question right here.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador. I am a political communications scholar, and I study women in politics.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested, given your numbers and your success with women. We know in this country and in other countries that the media often treat women politicians differently. Is that the case in Kosovo also? And I think I already know the answer.
Unfortunately, yes. You know, my lipstick or my hairstyle was more often a headline than a position I had on something very important. So if I wanted to make an important statement, I would need to change my hairstyle, so I would get attention and then make the statement. But unfortunately, it is the case. It is the case. Not as much as it was 10 or 15 years ago, but it is still very, very present. And it is something that we will need to fight together. Unfortunately now with the social media, the situation has deteriorated. Now the media is more, I don't want to say in control, but more positive towards women in politics. But then you have social media. And that's where the next challenge will be, how to utilize social media to empower women rather than to attack them based on their gender or on their looks.
Okay, we have a question back here, and then we'll get this gentleman.
Thank you for coming. My name is Shirley Zing, and I'm interested in property rights through your country, you know, the modern history. I'm interested because I originally live from Shanghai, China, and grew up in Cultural Revolution. So is your country from property, you know, being communist, how do they carry out the property rights, and is the property rights changed through the modern history? And along with that, I'll be interested how the religion being played in the role during that your history time, and then and now, how to compare with them.
Oh, when it comes to property, well, first of all, Kosovo is now a free market economy. So that is private sector and private property is one of the strongest pillars of our growth and of our economy. And this transformation took place right after the liberation. And thankfully, we did not have the problems some of the countries in former Yugoslavia had, also because of the international administration in Kosovo in the immediate aftermath of the war. So when it comes to property, it's a non-issue. It's a free market economy, and private property and private sector is the main pillar of growth. Frankly speaking, probably Kosovo was one of the very first countries in Southeastern Europe to introduce private sector. This is because of our occupation. When we were under occupation, our entire, we were completely banned from public space and from public economy. So we had to be very creative in order to maintain ourselves. So we would have like small trade, women and men going to Turkey or to, I don't know, Germany and buy goods and bring goods. And so it's a very, very vibrant, it was a very vibrant society even under occupation. Whereas today, it's a free market economy, and there's a very strong entrepreneurial spirit in Kosovo. Religion, that's a very, very good question. First of all, Kosovo is a very secular society. Secondly, religion was never the most important layer of our identity. Probably because religion was not something that united us as Albanians. We have Albanian Muslims, which is the predominant, but then you have also Albanian Catholics, you have Albanian Orthodox. But religion was never the main pillar of our identity. Our language was, our history, our culture. That's why in Kosovo you will see cities where the mosque, the Catholic and Orthodox churches share the same yard. We are a very young, we are a very small nation in numbers, so to say, but we gave the world one of the greatest saints, Mother Teresa. She is originally from Kosovo. So we grew up in a society that was not defined by tolerance, but by harmony, religious harmony. I remember growing up celebrating Bayram and Christmas the same way. For us, it was a social event, an event to sit around the table with family and friends and cherish God and life. But for us, it was about ethnicity. Our identity is built around our language and our culture.
Okay, we have a question here.
Thank you for coming, Madam Ambassador. Is Kosovo a member of NATO? And if not, does it plan to apply?
Yes, unfortunately, we're still not a NATO member. Unfortunately, we still have not applied because we still don't have an army. We are just in a process of establishing our armed forces. And once we have established our armed forces, there is no doubt that we will apply for Partnership for Peace and then for NATO membership. There is a very strong pro-NATO sentiment in Kosovo. But we also believe that the time has come for us to be providers of security. For way too long, we've consumed. For way too long, we have survived through international security assistance. But the time has come for Kosovo to step up, build its own armed forces, and have our soldiers serve next to your soldiers all around the world. So yes, we will apply for NATO membership. And yes, there is a very strong pro-NATO sentiment in Kosovo.
Okay, I have time for a couple more questions. If anybody has a question, Alex, you got somebody? Okay, we'll get this one, and if somebody else has a question.
Hello. Thank you for coming this afternoon, Madam Ambassador. My question is about in your constitution, the 30% female candidates and elected officials. Have you noticed since the beginning of that constitution being established to now, has women increased in numbers? Have you seen it for candidacy? Has it kind of decreased? Are you just trying to pull just to get that 30% number? Just didn't know how much that was affecting.
Oh, yes. Well, not only that has the number of women in the parliament, because that's a 30%, it's a quota. So they would be there no matter whether they won votes or not. But what we have seen in the last cycles is that women are there, not because of the quota, but because of the votes they're getting. Secondly, we've seen women promoting agendas that go beyond gender. And this has also empowered women. I was talking earlier about the dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia. Well, our chief negotiator was a woman. Chief negotiator for the dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia was a woman. I was chief negotiator with the European Union. So we've seen women assuming roles that go beyond the conventional, typical position that somehow are assigned to women. So yes, we've seen women thrive and grow also because of the quota, because quota was a good platform that allowed women to unleash their potential.
Okay, we have time for one more question right here.
Madam Secretary, thank you again for taking your time to come talk to us. I would like to ask a little bit more depth on something you've already touched on, which is your economy and your youth bulge. You've got about a 60% unemployment rate amongst the youth, at least as reported in Europe. What steps are you taking as a government to attract business and or to grow the economy beyond just the EU membership?
Thank you very much. Well, the truth is that the youth unemployment is very, very high in Kosovo. It's not 60%, but it's still very, very high. And it is very difficult to compete with other countries in the region to attract investment, also because of lack of political certainty and stability. Stability in terms of lack of political settlement with Serbia. Let me give you one example. If Kosovo is privatizing one agency or one institution, the first thing Serbia does is write to all companies that have bid it to privatize that agency, and to tell them that if they apply or if they win, they will be sued. Of course, nothing will happen to any investor because Kosovo's independence is legal. Yet, it is very difficult for us to attract serious and massive foreign investment. Kosovo economy on its own will not be able to absorb the number of young population that will enter the labor market every year. Now, let me tell you, we've had positive growth ever since we declared our independence. Our growth is actually the highest in the region, over 5% of, well, no, over 4.5% of GDP, which is the highest in our part of the world, if not beyond. But still, in order to be able to employ all the young people that enter the labor market, we need growth of over 12% of GDP. And we cannot get there unless we have serious and massive foreign investment. Our economy, as I said, is predominantly agriculture and services. And services is an area where I guess we will need to do more in order to offer customized and specialized training for our youth in order to be able to if not through an investor, but at least to employ themselves because the 21st century technologies are both an asset and a liability. And for us in Kosovo, it's an asset because we have a young population who is very well and very easily adopted to the new technologies. And probably that's the area where we will have to invest more because that will be the source of employment for the future generations as well. But it is a very serious challenge for Kosovo and for the rest of the countries in the Western Balkans.
Madam Ambassador, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you.